Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm going to give you a quick rundown today on geospatial or location analytics in Business Objects Cloud. So I'm just going to step through a few slides just to introduce you to some of the topics, give you an overview of the capabilities, and then we will have a quick demonstration. Then we'll take a look at the roadmap, what's coming. We've got some interesting new capabilities coming in the latter half of this year and beyond that as well. And then I'll show you just a preview of a couple of those as well, so you can see what we're working on. I'd say if you have any questions, if you use the chat window, I will pause my presentation at a couple of points, and I'll try and go through any of those questions as we proceed. So as usual, put my legal disclaimer up. I will be talking about some roadmap items, so it's worth just taking note of that. There are some forward-looking statements with some of the functionality that I'll be discussing, as well as the current capabilities. So just to be aware of that, the usual SAP disclaimers, legal disclaimers in that respect, apply. So the agenda this morning. I'm just going to give you a quick couple of slides to reiterate the importance of location analytics, just to introduce the topic. Then we'll take a look at the strategy we're adopting in this space and the current Business Objects Cloud solution and the roadmap. And finally, there should be plenty of time at the end of this session for a Q&A, as well as during the session itself. I'll also try and cover any questions I can as they come up in the chat window. Like I say, I'll pause at a couple of points and just drop out of my presentation, and we can just take a look at those if there are any questions. So let's begin with why is the importance of analytics. And I think if you're already on this presentation, you probably realize that there is a lot of geospatial analytical information out there, and that it really is important to combine that with the business data. And this is really about going beyond those standard GIS systems that many organizations have, and taking it to the next level. So a lot of organizations have already made very large investments in the GIS space. There are a number of vendors out there providing those sort of capabilities. But oftentimes they don't necessarily have the rich visualization capabilities that are available from the analytics side of the world. And so there is this growing need to provide this combination of those two pieces to help to visualize ordinary business data aligned with the geodata and vice versa. And then being able to present that in a meaningful way using the analytics tools. So there is a deep need for these capabilities within any analytics system, and we've seen this over recent years where it's become almost standard functionality to offer some of these capabilities within analytics tools today. There's definitely a lot of data out there, and it's growing all the time. And I think, again, we all understand and recognize these facts that there's an increasing sets of data out there that have geolocation data appended to them or available with them, and there's an increasing need to understand that, especially with items coming up being things like the IoT Internet of Things, where many sensors are now geotagged. It becomes increasingly important to be able to understand and analyze that geotagged data in a meaningful way. And the challenge, of course, is that there is a growing market with these unmet needs. So there's definitely, as I've mentioned, an understanding of the importance of location-based analytics, but there are inherent challenges in actually being able to analyze that location data systematically. And by that I mean challenges associated with being able to do more than just plot simple points onto a map. And that's really where I think I'll come on to in a moment, where we start to talk about geospatial and taking it to the next level, where really what we want to do is go beyond the simple chloroplast type maps where you're coloring in a region to signify a measure or value. Really trying to go beyond that and provide more advanced analytics around the data. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a while as we come to some of the capabilities that are offered in Business Objects Cloud. And then, of course, I think just to finally round this piece out is there's definitely consistent research that is indicating that there is a demand for the geographic and location-based analytics within organizations. So again, this is definitely something that we recognize as being very important to many organizations, hence why we are doing a lot of work in this space around Business Objects Cloud to really round out this area. So there are a number of challenges, and I've already begun to allude to this in that traditionally we have many silos of information, and this is especially true in the GIS space, not only in the traditional landscape of analytical data, but even more so in the GIS world, where we have our traditional operational applications with our transactional data. Quite oftentimes those are feeding into our business intelligence applications. So we may have in place a data warehousing strategy to feed our operational and analytical applications. And it's very common for the GIS groups and the GIS systems to be a completely separate silo from those other pieces of the enterprise. I speak to a lot of people and they often say, if they're from the GIS side, they see what we can do, and they say to me, "Wow, this is great. I'm going to go and talk to the BI team about this," and vice versa. The BI team will go and have to talk to the GIS team. They are very much in many entities separate organisations within the organisation, and very much siloed. And we really want to try and break down some of those barriers and start to leverage this great depth of information that we have available in these GIS systems and start bringing that into our analytical landscape to take advantage of. And that's really what this is all about. And that really leads me into our strategy and the solution overview. So what I'll do is without further ado, I'll dive in and we'll get straight down to the heart of this topic, which is the Business Objects Cloud piece. So our solution strategy is really to very much focus on providing an innovative location analytics capability based around our partnership with Esri. So we are a partner with Esri, and so we have a very strong integration with the Esri ARC systems. And we also, of course, being SAP, have our native HANA backend. So with that, we can take advantage of the native HANA spatial capabilities, and that gives us a great advantage in the fact that obviously we have this relationship with Esri, so we can take advantage of their great depth of knowledge and the capabilities that are available, and the fact that many SAP customers are also Esri customers, and so they already have significant investments in their Esri GIS systems. We want to ensure we can leverage that investment within the Business Objects Cloud framework, and then use HANA Spatial to provide additional capabilities around the location analytics on top of that. And this presentation is really just to focus on the Business Objects Cloud. You'll see I've got grayed out there. We do still have our traditional Business Objects Enterprise portfolio, and that has a slightly different approach. So that's very much around using partner solutions to provide that integration. There's a very rich partner framework there, and those partners are not exclusive to the Business Objects Enterprise framework, but today we're working predominantly with Esri on the Business Objects Cloud side, and then whereas the Business Enterprise portfolio has a longer and more storied history and has more partnerships within that landscape that are integrated into the traditional Business Objects Enterprise landscape. And on the note of partners, SAP does have a very broad partner ecosystem around the geospatial space. And we are working with, as I've already mentioned, with Esri and a number of others within the analytics organization here to ensure that we have the best geoinformation and the best analytical geospatial capabilities available to us within our Business Objects Cloud solution. So, what does that solution actually look like? Now, I'm going to jump straight into Business Objects Cloud, so I'm not going to do the usual overview of the cloud. I can come back and cover that if there's anyone on this webinar who hasn't seen that. I think if you're attending this one, you've probably already been to a couple of these, and you will have seen our analytics strategy and introduction to the Business Objects Cloud. I'll just mention it verbally and say that this is obviously the new Business Objects Cloud, formerly Cloud for Analytics, so part of our two-pronged approach to analytics, where we're investing heavily now in our brand new cloud solution based on the HANA Cloud Platform. So as I've mentioned, we can natively leverage those HANA capabilities behind the scenes. Now, this is a software as a service offering, so you don't need to worry about how that is enabled. But suffice to say, we can take advantage from a technology perspective of the fact we have those geo capabilities built into the underlying cloud platform that gives us a great advantage when it comes to providing these back out to you as a consumer of the services. So our geospatial capabilities within Business Objects Cloud, within the analytical context, so we can provide a variety of layers from the commonplace, such as bubble plots, where the size and color of the bubble will, of course, be tied to a geolocation, and also with the size of the metric or measure that's being displayed. Similarly, with chloroplasts, where the region shading will change depending on the associated measures, and heat maps again. So fairly common types there, I think, which most people are familiar with. And if you've ever seen a demonstration, and I will certainly use these in a moment, you'll have seen the bubble plots and chloroplasts before. Somewhat useful, but very much, if you like, the traditional geoanalytics capabilities. And then we get to some more some interesting pieces that we can provide within Business Objects Cloud. A couple of those are around the point of interest layers, so we can do support points of interest. Now, they can be individual points, so they can be a point location, or they can be shapes or tracks. And you'll see on this slide there's a couple of examples there. One is actually that's the parks. So the parks in Vancouver is being shown there. That map to the right of that with Mexico, that's actually showing the road network as well as airports and major cities in Mexico. And they're all points of interest files that I've overlaid onto my map. Now, we can also support feature layers. So we can connect to ArcGIS, and we can then consume the Esri feature layers and overlay those on the maps as well. So typically, most organizations will have created their own custom feature layers, and we can then consume those from an endpoint and push them onto our maps as well to further enrich them. And then the final one there, just been released, is our flow diagram. And the flow diagram gives you the ability to basically illustrate the connection between points on a map as well. So what we have there is a diagram where we can select to an origin, the destination, and then we can apply measures to that. And in this particular case, this is quite a small picture, but it's showing the transit times for packages. And then the color of the line and the thickness of the line are both indicators of both the cost and the time taken. So I can easily understand, more easily understand some of these sort of flows of data in a geospatial context. So a quite interesting mechanism there. We'll be adding more of those as we go forward. Where can this data come from? Well, we can either take this from the cloud, so we can connect to cloud data sources, whether that be in the HANA Cloud Platform, HANA as a DBAS service, or from other cloud services. So, for example, we have connectors to Concur and SuccessFactors, for example. We'll be adding more cloud sources as connectors. We can also take local data files, for example, Excel and Google Drive sources, as well as universes, and we can acquire that data into the Business Objects Cloud, and then use that to build our geo models. And we can also take point of interest files as well and load those in. Now we do support linking of models, so Geo is supported with linking. The Business Objects Cloud supports the fact that I can link across various models or data sets, and then I can then compare values within those linked data sets. And I can also support multiple location dimensions within the same source, so I can have multiple location values within the same data source or data file. I can also then filter on the information, and this is a really interesting aspect of the geospatial capabilities that we have, because we are running natively on top of HANA engine with our software as a service offering. We can take advantage of the HANA spatial filtering. So when we do a filter, we're actually, whether that be a polygon filter, so free forms or circle or rectangles, or whether that be a distance or intersection filter. So when you say, show me all the points within 10 kilometers of another point, for example, what we're doing is we're actually asking HANA to execute a spatial query for us, and that will then execute that and return the result sets back to us for display within our analysis. And that's quite unique in that we can do that in real time, so we can very quickly interact with any of our geodata with these types of filters and with these types of, on top of that native HANA capability. And we can also provide the linked analysis there, so we can drive filtering from a geospatial representation as well. So if I filter on a map in, let's say, for example, a story or dashboard, that will allow me to then affect the other items on the screen. So other items, if I've chosen to link them, will reflect the filter. So if I apply a polygon or a distance filter, that will then be reflected across all of the items on the dashboard that I built. And these can also be with a slider. So this can be what we called in the past things like input controls. Basically what we can do is we can add, for example, a distance slider to a map, and then that can be dynamically changed by the consumer of that visualization at any time. They can just slide that, and that will dynamically change the filter and re-execute those filters on the fly, which again is a nice capability we have there. Because of the native speed of the underlying platform, we can just re-execute those spatial queries very, very quickly to provide those capabilities. And then finally, around this, we can provide analysis with calculated measures. So we can provide, link all of the standard capabilities of the Business Objects Cloud, the measures, etc. We can include spatial hierarchies, and we can customize those within the environments, and we can provide the chloropleth type overlays. We can provide a mini overlay, mini chart on location points. Again, another nice feature here, where what we can do is we can provide a small tooltip. So when you hover over a location, that will provide a small analytic based on the items of your choice to give you more details. So you don't need to drill down necessarily, it will just give you a pop-up on there. And then finally, they also support clustering. So from the bubble layer, we do support currently client-side clustering. So what we'll do is we'll cluster the bubbles. You can affect the values for the clustering. You'll see on this slide it does show you where that would be. There is a location clustering, and you can just determine the number of points you would like this clustered on. So then as you dynamically drill in the map, the bubbles will cluster or uncluster depending on the zoom level. One thing to note is that we will be we're going to be adding pushing this down to the server side, and that will make this able to handle much larger data sets. So we are going to, as a future feature, push this down to the HANA spatial side for the server side clustering. So today it is client side clustering, and we'll be pushing this down to the server side as well to give us that advanced and much capabilities to provide this for very large data sets with even more performance on those very large data sets for the bubble clustering as well. We can also fully customize our color palettes, bubble sizes, points of interest, etc. We can import the shapes, the custom shape files that I've mentioned, and we can show and hide any of these layers within the geospatial context as we go through. So we have a lot of flexibility for the layout, and the layers that we can push onto our representations of the underlying geodata. And we can really customize this to any level we need to. What you commonly see in many of these systems is, and you'll see in my demonstrations actually as well, is we do support a number of different base map layers, but typically for an analytical capability, you want to reduce the amount of clutter on the map to really make the visualization stand out. So from a geo perspective, it's sometimes interesting to have those available. It's also useful to have these less interesting base maps available, some of these darker colors, the grays, where you can then really see the information much more clearly onto the data. We can swap any of those out and visualize anyone we choose and customize these as we go within the stories themselves.
All right, very good. We had a number of questions, and thanks to everyone for entering them, and please keep them coming. So a question from Luis: is the heat mapper layer by default, or does it need an add-on?
All of the features that I've talked about are default features, so there's no add-ons. Everything I'm showing you here is part of the core Business Objects Cloud capabilities, so there's no additional pieces required. The only additional piece would be if you wanted to integrate with an Esri GIS system, which is optional, and you did have some additional feature layers in Esri, then we would take those in from that underlying ARC system. But that is an option if you have those. If you don't have those, then you can take those in from files or from anywhere else. But that's it, yeah.
Okay, good. And Ken Lauver had pretty much the same question. Are these included in the cloud platform or third-party tools? So you've answered those. Question from Louise Schlachter: is it possible to create the locations for a geomap with a model that is an imported HANA view? It only worked for me when I use a local CSV file with longitude and latitude values.
Yes, so the answer is yes, we do. So what you need to do, there are instructions for that. If you search on SCN, or if you ping my email, I can search you out that link for that.
They can reach out to me. And
yeah, if they reach out to you, then you can pass on to me. Basically, we support that. Typically, what you have to do is we recognize the native HANA spatial data type STI point. So typically, what you would do is you would ensure that your native view had that available, and then we would pick that up. So we don't need to effectively geo-enrich from a cloud and push it down to HANA. It would be already done in the view, and we can get you instructions on how to do that, and we support the analytical views and the count views, graphical count views for that as well. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Adrian. And so, Louisa, please feel free to reach out to me for any follow-up questions. A question for Claudia Gebersman: could I also use a custom XY coordinates base map, like a floor plan, for my geo visualization?
I'll come on to that in a while. Not today, but that's certainly an area that we are looking to explore. And I'll come on to that when I talk about the roadmap in a little while. So I will mention, I'll just jot that down, and then I'll make sure I come back and just mention that topic for you in a short while. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And question again from Louisa: how can the polygon filter be used for corresponding charts?
So the question about the polygon filter, yes. So what you do is you ensure that the analytics are linked together. So all you do is you just link the analytics so that when one analytic has a filter, it affects the other analytics. It's not part of my demo, but if you go on to, you can either go to help.sap.com and look at the documentation there, or the sap.com/learnbi resources. And if you look there about the linked filtering, that would explain to you how you set the storyboards up with the ability to make sure that the filters are linked so that they affect everything on the page, or they only affect the individual visualization. And that's how you would do that. You would set up to be linked, and then that would let you, when you, let's say, put a polygon filter on, it will affect the rest of the visualizations there, or any filter for that matter.
Thank you. And again, Louisa, please feel free to reach out to me by email, and I'll get you further information. So a question from Olivia, is Esri totally optional or not needed at all?
Yes, it is totally optional. So we do have a partnership with Esri, so the underlying base maps that we use, and you'll see these in a second when I show you a demo, but the base maps we get from Esri, and they're part of your Business Objects Cloud subscription, so that's the core base maps. And as I said, the actual support for Esri feature layers, that is optional. So if you do have an Esri system, we can leverage what you have in there, but if you don't, then you don't have to use that. So yeah, that is absolutely optional, but we do have a partnership, so you do get some of that as part of your basic cloud subscription, the base maps. And we support 11 base maps.
Thank you. And there's a couple more questions I'll try to go through very quickly so we can get back to your demo. Question from Luis, is it possible to create 2 layers from 2 different sources?
Yep, absolutely. You can a layer can be from any source, so each layer can be from a different source for sure, yes. You just pick the data source and make results on that, yeah.
Thank you. And finally, a question from Ken again. Does this have the limitation, I assume he means like for Lumira, which for only cities with a population of 100,000 or larger, that's the NAVTech model limitation?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a while, because that's another one I'll mention as a future capability. So that's to do with geocoding, and I'll come on and talk about geocoding in a second, and the answer will be no. But we don't currently geocode within Business Objects Cloud, and I'll talk about how that works in just a second as well. I'll talk about the geocoding because that's coming very, very soon as well.
Okay.
And we're not going to have that limitation. Yes.
Great, and thanks for that, Adrian. And so, without further ado, we can go back to your demo.
Okay. Hopefully, I will now just put my browser up, and I'm just going to show you a couple of very simple geospatial examples where I've pre-built some content here onto the screen. So this is an example where I've already done some data acquisition. So I brought the data in and modeled it, whether that be from, in this case here, this is a number of data sources. I've got field glass data, which is SAP's cloud contract management system. I've also got some Concur expense information and travel data that I pulled in, and I've also got some HR information from SuccessFactors. And I've got those pulled into the system and geocoded where needed. And then this is just an example of typically where you would use geo in the context of a story, where we have here overlaid a number of layers onto my overall map. And these layers, in this case, I haven't named them, but these layers actually show me, for example, the heat map here is the carbon footprint, and then I have my office locations for my employees, and I also have my destinations for travel. So you can see here the large yellow dot is the largest office location with 71 employees, and then the blue dots represent where people are traveling, the destinations they're traveling to, and then the faint red overlay is the carbon footprint overlay. So that just illustrates how I can combine multiple layers from multiple sources onto a single map. And then this being an ordinary dashboard, I can go into any of these components, be the geospace or the any of these other charts that I have here, and I can edit those very, very quickly. So just before we dive into the geo, let me just go in and very quickly just add something to this this bar chart here. Let's go in and take a look at the I'll go to a different source. So I was adding my field glass data. Let's go in and add another measure to that. Let's add my contract account in there. You'll see the chart will change as I do that. I'm just going to have to add a new filter because that's showing me all the contractors I've ever had. Let me just add a filter for employment, and I only want my active, in this case, contractors, not the ones that I've used and then they've moved on. So that's just a very quick example of how I can go in and edit any of these chart types. So here I've just added, combined two different sources to this particular type. So I've now got my contractors and my employees headcount by team within my organization. So just drilling into that very, very quickly. And I could continue to finesse that. But what we'll do is we'll move on, take a look at just a couple of the geo pieces in here. So I'm looking at some travel and expense management information in this particular example. So a very simple example here where we have, again, a similar geo representation where I can easily go in and, for example, in this particular case, we'll add a geo filter. So I'm going to go in and actually start filtering this dynamically on my system. So I'm just going to go down here. So same thing as you saw in my previous one. On this, when I have this geo map selected, I have my design come up. I can go in and I can change any of my layers, change the colors that are being used to illustrate these, change the marker types. For example, I could add additional marker types in there for, in this case, a point of interest for my office locations. So I can very quickly change those as needed. I can change the colors and the values, and any of these then layers as well. I can go in and add new layers. I can switch these layers on and off. So if I choose to remove a layer, I can just hide that very quickly. And any of these layers I can change within this. And I could also change the underlying base map. And I mentioned the fact that with our relationship with Esri, we get these as part of the core capability. So in this case, if I chose not to show this as just a dark gray world map, I actually wanted to see this with street level detail, or satellite imagery, for example, I can change the base map and very quickly just show that as a different one. So I've got the choice there of these base maps that are available to me. And I can also add map filters. So within the context of this one here, so my map filter, I could change that. I've got a map filter that pivot my. Usually I've got to just move my window ever so slightly because the you probably can't see, but there's an odd artifact of the presentation tool, which is appearing, and it's blocking out my ability to add a filter. So this is just causing me a slight hiccup. I'm just going to go and add a map filter. So there we go. I just managed to get the plus button to come up there. What this will let me do is apply a filter. So in this case here, I can apply various filters, be that distance or intersection. But prior to that, what I can also do is if I wanted to, I could apply just well, I'll do that actually in a second. What I'll do is I'll add a distance filter and then we'll drill down. So let me just add this distance filter. My Windows is very nicely snapping to size. Let me add a distance filter that is going to show me anything within a certain number of kilometers. So let's say within 50 kilometers of, we'll go with an office location. I could choose to add that as a slider, so I could then have that as something I could interact with. But for this case, I'm just going to go and quickly show me everything within all of my travel within 50K office. So that's what's going to. And what you'll see in that context is that these are actually linked. So as it applies that filter, you'll see my KPIs have changed. So everything in this particular dashboard is linked to that individual geomap that I've got there. So when I filter down that geomap, you can see there that the overall value of the miles flown has changed. So I can very quickly see there that of my initially I had 3 million miles flown. Now I've only got 1 million miles. So 1 million miles is probably going to be me, my employees flying between office locations. And I can see the rest of my dashboard here as well has also changed as I've drilled down into that. Now I can also immediately see there's a big bubble around the San Francisco destination here. So if I want to go and analyze that, let's add a lasso query just around that one there. So let me just do a quick lasso filter on there. And that will filter that down again. You'll see the values are getting changed now. So rather than using a distance filter, I'm just using a dynamic lasso filter in that context. So I've just drilled down. I can zoom in and out in this context here. And you'll immediately see in this case, in this particular example, when I drill down there, these are my, you'll see there that there's only 2 airports within this lasso filter now. So San Francisco and San Jose in this case. And it's also pretty clear from just this simple query that my employees who are flying into San Francisco could maybe fly into San Jose where the fares are considerably cheaper. So potentially I'd look to ask my employees to maybe change their travel planning and look to fly to a different airport in this context to reduce the cost, because it's significantly more expensive to fly into San Francisco. So that's just a very simple example in this demonstration of where we're using some geodata overlaid and then exploring that with either distance or with polygon filters to understand what's going on inside the data for in this case, my employees' travel and expense planning, and then understanding the cost of those trips themselves. So that's just a simple example there of where I've pre-built one of these. I'll very, very quickly, just in the interest of time, I'm running over, but if I just add a new page just to show you how you create a geospatial, it really is as simple as adding a geomap to the canvas. So I just click there that I want to select a geomap, and then I can just size that any way I choose. I can then choose to maybe change that to be a different base map, whether that be satellite imagery, OSM information. If I zoom in, you'll see that it will start to provide the additional data. So very, very easy for me to apply these. Maybe I'll do a different base map there. Let's do a topographic display. So as you can see, very quick and easy for me to select these default base maps. And then if I want to add any additional information, it's just as simple as adding a layer, choosing the layer type. So, for example, here I can choose the type of layer, whether that be a bubble or a heat map, and then I can just add the data that I'm interested in to the chart type itself. So we choose a bubble, and we choose the source, and that could be an existing model, and I can choose any of my existing models, whatever they might be. So let's take travel, and then I can just select the bubble types. We'll zoom out, see if we get, and my location. So let's do my destinations. So there we go. It's now showing me my those points on the map there, and I can easily either change these. So, for example, one of the early ones was around heat mapping. Again, very similar. There's a heat map. So I can very quickly just change these values and show that on the map. You can see that I've got my blur radius, which will affect the way that that looks on the map. So all part of the default behaviors for adding these. And I can continue to add layers, and those layers can be from different sources. So if I go in here and add a new layer, maybe if I want to add a feature layer, I can then choose that one. There would be from an Esri service URL, or I could add, for example, here you can see my flow layers. I could add all my point of interest layers. In this case here, let's add an example there where I've got all of the Starbucks that are within in downtown San Francisco. So quite handy for me this morning. Post this presentation, I'll be checking on this to find my nearest Starbucks location. But it's also good in this context. I can see that very quickly I could then start to do analysis with within this point of interest file that I've loaded up as well. So that's just a very quick view of how quick and easy it is to not only use the geo capabilities, but to build that out when you are using Business Objects Cloud as well. Now what I'm going to do is just quickly drop back to the presentation, and just got a couple more things to cover and should leave some time for questions at the end. Just going to talk very briefly about the roadmap. So you've seen, and I've described a lot of what we have available today with the various layers, the data we have, our filtering and analysis capabilities, and the customization of those within Business Objects Cloud as well. The actual picture there for planned H2 is a flow map, and that's just been released. So it is showing in today, but the diagram there is still in the plan phase. I've got to change that to something else now. But the flow diagrams have just been released in the latest wave. Every 2 weeks we update Business Objects Cloud, and the latest release includes now the flow diagram. Coming later this year, we will be including support for the latest graphical calc views on-premise. As part of that, we already support the analytical views, but graphical calc is where we're going with that. We're looking to, as I've mentioned already, support the HANA native spatial clustering. So that will give us more complex capabilities around the clustering of the data we have there. We are also going to be supporting ArcGIS Online, the on-premise ArcGIS. We currently support the ArcGIS Cloud solution as an endpoint. We will be supporting your on-premise solution as well in H2 is the plan. Custom hierarchy levels for Chloropleth, we're looking to improve the support there, and also larger data set optimizations for performance. Now the geocoding, I'll mention that because there was a question around geocoding. So we are going to be adding geocoding support. So currently you need to geo-enrich based on lat long, or have a geo-enriched underlying HANA view. We will be adding native geocoding to Business Objects Cloud, and we will be pushing that out to a service so that we can then geocode based on the information that's provided there. So that will be coming. The plan is in the second half of H2. That will be a drag and drop geocoding. So you'll be able to take, let's say, a spreadsheet of information, drop it on the browsing on the cloud there, and that will then go away and geocode based on whatever information it has in there, whether that be a partial address, for example. It will then geocode that for you. So that will be coming, and it won't be limited to, I know many people may have tried Lumira, which has some inherent limitations. It does that locally. With this being on the cloud, we can connect out, so we have a lot more flexibility on how we can do that geocoding and how we can provide a much finer-grained set of geocoding capabilities. Now, beyond that, we are also looking to provide reverse geocoding as well. So reverse geocoding is typically where you take an address or a partial address, and then you convert that to a point that long so you can plot that onto your underlying base map. Reverse geocoding, as the name suggests, is the opposite. So that's typically where you would take a lat long point and you would turn that into a street address again, so that you can get to understand how that would display on the underlying base maps. We are looking at custom base maps and indoor analytics, and I think that was one of the other questions around importing both custom base maps, whether that be a third-party set of base maps or base maps typically of an interior location, and we are investigating indoor analytics as it is sometimes known. So taking that geospatial down to a very fine grain, typically on custom indoor maps to, for example, look at common examples of things like trying to analyze consumer patterns within locations, footfall information as to where people move around inside conferences, etc. So we're looking at that definitely as a future capability. It certainly is a hot topic in the geospace, is being able to move down to those more fine-grained indoor type pieces. We're looking at also 3D visualizations. So here we're looking at providing not just those flat base maps, or even the topographic is still somewhat flat, but looking potentially at some of the 3D capabilities that are emerging now in this space, so providing that extra dimension to the analytics. And then also route optimization, so taking advantage again of some of those native geo capabilities that we have to look at when we have points or we do filters, to then take route optimization algorithms and apply those to our analytics, and finding moving data, so real-time data as it moves, then we'll plot that again on the geo context as well. So that's a quick look at the roadmap. I'll show you a couple of those features. So I've mentioned clustering is an example where we've already got a geo map up with a cluster, and then as we drill down, it's going to dynamically decluster. So going forward, this will be a native push down to the HANA layer. This example is from a dev system where I'm pushing that down to the HANA layer. Then I can filter on those again with a polygon filter to reduce the number of bubbles further and drill down again. So the clustering is coming planned for later this year or early next at least. Here's an example of where I can today take advantage of Esri service URL. So here I'm connecting to a feature layer. We're going to be improving this as we go forward. So this is again future capabilities, but looking to basically allow you to select any of those feature layers very easily. So rather than going and having an individual feature layer, being able to pull back a selection of those and then select the underlying feature layer that I'm interested in. So giving me access to all of that good geodata that I've got stored in my Esri ARC systems, then overlaying that onto my core base maps within Business Objects Cloud. I mentioned geocoding. So I've also got the flow map. So here's just another a larger picture, a larger example of a flow map. This is an example of, like I say, of I think this is my shipping example, where the longer the line indicates the lines indicate the flow of my in this case packages that I'm shipping. The color of the line represents the value, and then the thickness of the line is the time it takes. So I can see I've got some thicker lines and others that are also costing me considerably more, so I can start to optimize some routes in this particular context. And then geocoding. So here's an example where what I would do is I could take a spreadsheet, a file, any file, drop it onto my map. What that will do is that will then geocode for me. So it will upload the file on the fly. It will geocode that, and then it will plot those points as points onto my underlying base map. So in this particular case, I had some locations that were partial addresses, and then Business Objects Cloud took those partial addresses and it geocoded those and then plots them onto my underlying base map. It's important to also point out that today you can do that with a point of interest file. So if you have a POI file or a shapefile as a file on your desktop, you can just drop that straight onto Business Objects Cloud, and it will take that file and it will import that dynamically and make it available to you as a point of interest layer. Like I say, and then we're going to be adding the geocoding as well to that capability. So not only will it allows you to take a file that is already has that detail in, but now we can geocode on the fly as well, and then allow you to use that in your geo analysis too. So that's probably just about on time, with a few minutes left for to wrap up. I'm not sure. I think the number of questions in the chat window has stayed the same. I'll pass it back to
actually, Adrian, but first of all, thank you for the great presentation. There are a few other questions. I don't know if you can see them, but I will recite them.
No, I'm still, for some reason, I still don't have the ability to undo my sharing. But,
No problem. I can recite the questions if that's okay. So a question again from Olivia. What standard data services are included out of the box? US, worldwide, etc.
it's worldwide. Yeah,
Okay.
out of the box we include base maps for the whole world. So yeah. And then regionals are Europe and Americas. In some areas are slightly more patchy from a hierarchy perspective. It depends, but generally they're pretty good. But it's worldwide, yes.
Okay, thank you. And a question from Sriram. Can we use a JSON file to create a custom map? And it was answered. It was answered also by Jan saying custom support is being looked at for a future release. So if you want to add anything,
it is. That's right. We are. Yeah. We are looking at that for future. Yes. So it's a roadmap. We're looking at how we can improve our abilities around that. So looking at opening up the APIs around that to provide those capabilities. Yes.
Thank you. And a question from AB, user AB, just to confirm, the geospatial analysis can be used with both the planning and analytical type models, correct?
Yes, it can. Yes.
Okay. And indeed, user AB, you might be interested in our next scheduled Expert Series webinar on September the 7th, which covers advanced planning features in Business Objects Cloud. So please check SCM for that. And question again from Sriram, can we set the focus to only one region instead of the entire map and users having to zoom into it?
Yes, I believe we can. I'll probably have to come back to you on that. There is the focus setting, depending on where the data is located, will affect the focus. So quite often, you saw me when I added a file, it will automatically zoom in and to the area of interest. By default, mine will set to be worldwide. But I believe that is. I'll have to verify that. But I believe we can do that. Yes.
Thank you.
If not,
and another question from Sriram: when we drag and drop an Excel file, where is the actual data stored? As metadata, or is this different? Not quite sure. The question has fully been expanded, but
when you drag and drop a file onto the browser, what that does is that uploads that into Business Objects Cloud. So it is stored in the Business Objects Cloud, and that would be part. Then that becomes available in the within the environment for you to control and manage like any other data set that's been acquired. So that absolutely gets moved up into the Business Objects Cloud.
I was expecting to see how point of interest and other source files containing location information gets loaded, labeled, and linked before getting used in a story, essentially setting up initial models with Geospatial. We have had some other webinars on that, and you might want to check on the SCN page, which I did enter in the chat window earlier, and I'll enter again. So please check the former recordings. Also, there's a link to tutorials, but I don't know if you want to answer anything about that.
Yeah,
the process of setting it up.
Yeah, I didn't know with the content and the timing. I knew I was going to run out of time. It's really very simple. When you're building a model, you just go in and you just set the type to be a geotype. So you just go in and set it to be kind of that long, and it will then geocode it for you. With a point of interest, you just upload the file. So you just drag and drop it onto the page, or you can go into the modeler and there's a points of interest tab there, and you can just upload a point of interest file from whatever the source might be, and then it will load it up. So it's pretty straightforward. And I think that is covered as well in the tutorials as well. So if you go to Learn BI, I'm pretty sure there's one on there, and also on the SCN articles. There's the help there for you as well.